2,628, 2,629, 2,000, and oh, hi there. Oh, welcome to this video. This video, sponsored by Sore Workouts. Oh, would love to have you. Enjoy the video. Oh. What's up, guys? Hope you're all doing well in this season. I am so excited to share today's interview with you guys. Today I'm talking to my really good friend Austin. And Austin, you know, all of us have suffered in the season of lockdown, but Austin has suffered more than most. Probably of all the people I know in this city, what's happened in his life during this lockdown has been the most challenging and most difficult. And to hearing what he shared with me in this interview about keeping his eyes on God, trusting him through everything, being open with God about the struggles and everything, I just really respect him as a man of God, and I'm excited for each of you to hear the wisdom he has that God's taught him through crazy season of his life and of our life. So yeah, thanks for coming along and welcome, and let's get into the interview. Bye. All right, welcome back everybody to this next episode of Lockin In Lockdown. Today I'm super excited to have one of my good friends, Austin, here. Austin is an amazing man of God in this city. He's a great person to talk about lockdown because he has two kids and both of them were born in the middle of lockdown. So tell us kind of like how that went down.
We found out we were having Jojo. His name is Josiah, by the way. We call him Jojo. Back in September or August 2021, and we were just really excited to have him. And during that time, Shanghai was still normal. Everything was back to 100%. We were able to gather. Our church was actually meeting. Our youth group was actually able to gather every Friday night. And then I guess starting in mid-March, beginning of March, we started having a lot of issues with just COVID cases in Shanghai. And our hope really at the very beginning was thinking that the lockdown would last 3 days or 7 days, and it started going to 10 days, 14 days. And now, even now at the end of April, we're still in lockdown. But I would say that during that time leading up to Jojo's birth, he was born April 2nd, we were just praying like, God, please end the lockdown. And then when that didn't happen, what happened was Jojo's due date was actually on March 27th. And he was late basically, right? And so around March 29th, March 30th, we went to go to the hospital, which is a huge ordeal in itself, in the sense of like, just let listeners know, during that lockdown period, there were like basically no cars allowed to leave the compound. We were stuck inside of our own block basically. And somehow by some miracles, someone from our church was able to drive us to the hospital. And even when we get to the hospital, there was a ton of COVID tests that needed to happen. And then when Jolie was going through all the tests, they basically told us to stay the night starting that day. And we luckily packed enough for about 3 days to stay at the hospital. But what happened was we ended up staying there for 7 days. And that's where I think it was very, very stressful. Just try to imagine this, okay? Like you go to the hospital thinking that if God loves us, if God really wants to bless us, this baby will come within the next 2 days. So we don't have to stay at the hospital too long. And let you know how the hospital is like. We actually went through the Chinese side of the hospital. So we were not in the VIP section. We were not in the expat section, but we were in the Chinese side. And so what that means is with anything that happens in China, it's kind of like a assembly line in terms of how they do hospital stuff. So to let you know, like they'll have like 3 moms all in the same room. They do the same test for all the babies, and they could take hours sometimes to do just a very simple routine examination or a routine what we call ultrasound. And so it was just a really horrible time there. And then with lockdown, what that meant was we could not leave the hospital premises. Even just to go outside, there was actually a Lawson across the way, like a convenience store there, but we couldn't even go to there to get food.
Just like yearningly looking out the window. Lawson's.
Yeah. And I think probably the biggest struggle during that initial step was the uncertainty of when the child will come.
Mm.
And I think on top of that too, we have our firstborn. She was at home with grandma at our house right now, and that was the longest we've ever been separated from our daughter during
Mm.
that time too. And so, yeah, it was just like a really difficult time, and I think there was just a lot of stresses because we were telling everyone in our community, pray for us that the baby will come in 1 or 2 days, but then the days started stretching into 4 days, 5 days. And it actually took, I think, around the sixth day for our child to come, and we were actually in the hospital for about 8 days, I believe, by the end of it. And so it's just really, really rough. I would say it was probably one of the lowest points where I think I actually cried 2 times, I believe. Once when we called our daughter, and then near the end when the baby was still not coming, and I had like a planned day. I was hoping by Friday we would leave,
Mhm.
but instead the baby has not come yet by that point, and then it took about Saturday for the baby to come too. And so it was just like probably the lowest point was waiting for Josiah to come. My daughter wants to say hi. Hi, Jack, waving.
Hey. Hi,
Hi.
Allie.
Who's that? It's Kenny? Yeah. So even when Josiah was born, um, we were happy that he was here. But there was a possibility that we might need to stay in the hospital for another week if there was no drivers or no one that can take us to the hospital back to our compound. We were actually told even that from our compound that we might need an ambulance to drive us back in because there's no rides, there's no transportation.
Wow.
And if we come back, we would need, I think, like second tier covering protection, which meant that we need a face mask. We need to wear like what a
The
big
bunny suit.
apron, and then Jojo would need to wear one too, which is
At like
crazy.
2 days
And there's
old.
actually nothing for him. Yeah, 2 days old at the time. And so we were in this place where there was just a lot of unknowns to it, even getting home. But what happened was, thankfully, um, I would argue the way Shanghai works is that yes, there are very strict rules, but there's always some loophole, some way around it. And so we were able to actually get someone from our our church to leave their compound. They got permission as long as we showed like where we were and that we have an appointment to leave. They can come get us. And so they were able to get us. We had to do a COVID test together before we went back to the compound. But then we were able to be reunited, thankfully, on the
Wow.
same day, basically 8 days later, right, from when we first went
Wow.
out.
What a moment. I bet you were happy to see Daddy, Allie.
Were you happy to see Daddy?
Were you happy to see Daddy?
Like, yes.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah. Okay, man. So walking through that, how did you and Jolie like wrestle with that with the Lord, right? I'm sure you were praying and talking to him and feeling like, hey guys, you're not answering me. And also particularly like this part of it where you just have an unknown end date, that part of it seems
Right.
so hard. It's like you're in here, but you don't have, you can't say like, oh, I just got to make it through 2 more days. I just got to get it through 24 more hours. You're like, I just got to make it till some distant place in the future. And the reason I think this question is so relevant is because all of us are in that situation right now, right? None of us know when lockdown is going to end. So I think a lot of us, maybe not as intensely as you felt it, but all of us to some extent can really relate to your feeling of just like, how do I get ready and go when I don't know how long the race is going to be, like how long I have to bear this. So how did you do that, and how did you make it through that, and kind of how did God help you through that? And what did he teach you through that intense version of it that now we're all going in the easy version of it? Not to call what we're going through easy, but yeah.
I think the first thing, and I think I'm very thankful about this, is that my family, we've always been very open about our feelings and very transparent in prayer with God about disappointments and failures and having dashed expectations or trying to be flexible. And I feel like I want to argue this. I'm in my mid 30s now, 34 years old, that this is probably the hardest season of my life. And I've always felt like I'm a very flexible person, someone that can take hits when they come along. But this is probably one of the most difficult seasons I've ever experienced, just because there's so much opaqueness with future plans that the government doesn't even know exactly what they're doing in some ways. I think the biggest challenge has been not hoping in what the government says or what the news says or even what we want to expect, but to really hope on God, right? Hope on the Lord almost, if not a daily basis, almost an hourly basis or minute by minute, especially in the hospital. And I would say that when you wrestle with these things and you're like really angry and bitter with God, it's good to vent it. And so me and my wife, we were talking at the hospital during that time and just always venting to God about I can't believe this is happening right now. I can't believe we can't even go to the convenience store outside, or wow, we're out of food right now in the hospital, or I only had 3 days worth of clothes for 8 days, right? And I didn't bring a shaver. I didn't bring a toothbrush, and so I had to get those things in the hospital. Luckily, and one of the biggest blessings is I think, well, number one is yeah, when you're going through disappointment, count your blessings and seek what God is doing. And
Mm,
I would say that during those s- uh, 5 days before Josiah was born, that was the longest time Jolie and I have had together, uh, just me and her in about 2 years, because we have another child. We have a lot of people coming to our house, and then the blessing was, Jolie was not having any contractions yet, and so we were kind of in a place where we were just kind of just waiting for the baby to be born, and we
yeah.
were expecting. We were disappointed. We also had a lot of time to do devotionals together, and one of the things that just struck us was just reading through the book of Job and
Mm,
reading through Exodus, and just kind of studying what it meant to be punished by God and what it meant to be waiting on Him.
mm,
And I think the thing that kind of came up over and over again was, especially with the Israelites leaving Egypt, is that immediately when they got out of Egypt, God did all these amazing miracles. He provided for them. He showed them His power and that He had a plan for them. That's when they started grumbling, is once they got into the desert and they were in this unknown place, right? Like they knew there
mm,
was a promised land. They knew God loved them. They knew that there was a plan, but in the middle of inconvenience, in the middle of distractions and grumbling and different voices around them, they started losing sight of who God was. And then the big, I think the big like main point of all of this was trust in God's plans, trust in what He has done for us in the past, and hope in Him above all things.
yeah.
I One verse that I love that I always hold on to is very easy to memorize. Is Exodus 14:14. It just says, "Be still, for the Lord will fight for you." And that's when Moses was before the Red Sea, as the Egyptian army was coming upon the Israelites. That's what God said to him, right? The first thing He said was, "Be
Mm,
still." And so that's what Jolie and I kind of started doing, was just kind of like pausing and recognizing that there's a lot of voices right now. There's a lot of disappointment. We're trying to hope in the hospital, hope in the government, but we can't do that. We have to hope only on God. And
mm.
He wants not just part of my heart, but my whole heart. And I think that was where that journey has been a month long now, too, right? Just kind of going to a place where we cannot hope in anything that's happening in society around us or in our work or in our schools, but it has to be knowing that we trust in God and that He will refresh us. He is the good shepherd.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Yeah, and a couple weeks ago we were talking at SOAR about Jesus' command to not worry, where He says, "Don't worry."
Mm.
And as we were like reading that verse, it was the beginning of lockdown, and the war in Ukraine had just started, and or it was just
Mhm.
like hitting its, I mean, it's still going on, but and I remember just thinking like, okay, Jesus commanded us to not worry, but there are Christians in Ukraine right now who might get bombed today, who don't have food, who
Right.
who like, so what does it mean when Jesus is saying don't worry when bad stuff could still happen to you? Right? So like how does that work? Because we always take like don't worry, like, oh, you'll have what you need. But you like we don't know. Like, oh, don't worry because lockdown will end soon. Well, we don't know if it will end soon. So what does it mean when Jesus says don't worry? And and I think what you're saying about not putting your hope in the government ending the lockdown, or the hope in the hospital getting you home, or hope in whatever, like, or even in your own ability to make this time good or whatever, not putting your hope in those kind of like temporal things, but to hope in God. And I think what hit me as I was reading this passage about Jesus saying don't worry is he kind of finishes it by saying, seek first the kingdom and His
Mhm.
righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And so what Jesus is saying there is not that you will always be comfortable and have abundance, but that you will always have what you need to seek the kingdom. So yeah, like you're saying, when we put our hope in God, that means that like whatever we need to do what God has for us to do in this season, we will for sure have that. And ultimately, that's what life is about. Life's not about having enough food or being comfortable or having whatever we like. Life is about the kingdom. It's about knowing God and being close to God. And we for sure will have what we need for that. And so that's like a huge, huge comfort. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your wisdom on this, Austin. And we'll continue praying for you and your kids. Jojo sleeping at all, or is he like still screaming through the night?
I feel that's like a story for another podcast,
Okay.
but I think he's doing better. He's doing better right now.
Oh, good.
Thanks for asking too.
Well, really love you guys, and thanks for coming on, and tell your lovely wife hello. And hey, Allie, you want to say hi and bye to everybody, Allie?
I say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right.
I love you.
All right. Thanks so much, Austin.
Thanks, Kenny. See you later.
Wow, so good. Yeah, that was actually my third time watching through that interview, and so much good stuff that Austin shared. Just really thankful for this. I just want to encourage you to really put into practice what he mentioned. You know, first, just being honest with God, even in the middle of having tons of questions and not understanding what God's doing. Be honest with him, open with him about how you're feeling. God's not afraid of that. He loves you past all that, and so be real with him. And second, count your blessings. See what God's doing in this time. You know, God is doing something that you can't even see, and so trust that he's not wasting any of your suffering. And third, and this is I think the most key, is just looking to God as our hope in this time, looking to God as our source, the one who's going to carry us through. Not a change in policy, not supplies, not friends, not even yourself or your own ability, but God and his power and his reign over your life to carry us through. I just want to end with the verse that Austin that gave to us, that God spoke to him, Exodus 14:14. Be still, for the Lord will fight for you. Catch you guys in the next one.